everyone. Is working? Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We'll try it again. Can everybody hear me? Welcome to the 2019 Meet the Candidates, or actually our next board members. This is kind of a unique night because we are not having an election. They are the only two homeowners that submitted their name for the board of directors, so they will be confirmed on the board at our annual meeting. I want to welcome everyone. As I said, my name is Rick Navin. I'm a member of the election committee. I want to just mention the names of the other folks that are on the election committee. We've got Linda Smart, Kelly Short, Ray Baroni, Joe Ventry, Roger Ramos, and our chairman was Ray Dobbins, who stepped down as soon as he submitted his name to the board. I'd also like to thank the audiovisual people that are recording this. I want to thank KW Property Management for everything they did, and our crew for setting up the room. The format for tonight, keep in mind they've been elected. We're going to try to keep this fairly friendly, okay? The format for tonight, we're going to have each one of them give an opening statement. Then we will start asking questions. We'll alternate who answers the question first. They can answer the question, then the other one has the option of replying to the question. Okay? So we're going to get started. Ray is going to open with an opening statement.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I want to thank them for submitting their names and volunteering to be on our board of directors, which is going to be a lot of work for them. So thank you.
Okay, all set? Okay, wait one second. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ray Dobbins, and I'm going to be one of your new board members effective at the annual meeting this March. First, I'd like to explain the way this came about. I was the chair of the election committee, and I've been thinking about running for probably about a year. And on that weekend, right before the deadline, I decided to submit my name. So I did. And then I was notified late Monday that only one other person did, and so here I am. So I'll continue. First, I would like to thank our current board members, our KW management team, and all of those who have offered me good wishes, and all of you who have come out tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for you to get to know me and for me to get to know you. So to that end, let me begin. I was born and raised in New York City, starting out in Brooklyn, and then on to the borough of Queens. Yay. Thank you. I eventually moved to Long Island, where Marie and I lived for 36 years. We've been married for 49 years, and there she is. We have one son and one daughter-in-law and two granddaughters. I have a degree in criminal justice. I joined the New York City Police Department in 1968 and served for just under 30 years. I was promoted to sergeant and later on to lieutenant. I also spent 5 years in an undercover assignment. After retirement from the police department, I took a job with a jewelry firm where I worked for 10 years. Our son is a doctor, as is my daughter-in-law. They settled in New Mexico, where they began their medical careers. Marie and I eventually moved to New Mexico in 2007. We lived there for 8 years prior to moving here to Village Walk. We are full-time residents and have lived here for coming up on 4 years this September. In New Mexico, I became very active in that community. It was the first gated Pulte community in that area. I eventually ran for board president and was elected to that position in 2009. I was re-elected twice and served for just under 6 years. In the beginning, I was the only resident on the board, serving along with 4 Pulte employees. As the community grew, eventually we became an all-owner board. I served during the transition period and during some trying times. Our management team had to be terminated, and a number of personnel changes were needed until we found the correct personnel to effectively manage our community. I was active in hiring a new management company, the lifestyle director, community manager, and engaged with forming the necessary committees needed for our community. I was also effective in persuading Pulte to transition our community into a Dell Web community. This caused many more investments and many upgrades to be made by Pulte. This dramatically caused values to rise and additional new home sales. I like to volunteer. I like to serve. I don't believe in always leaving it up to others. This board has been very effective, but to have only 3 board members to serve a community this size is unfair to the board and to the community. I've been active in this community as well. I call bingo, I play tennis, pickleball. I'm on 2 bocce teams and a member of the men's golf club.
And he does that all on the same day, usually.
I do. I like sports and I like reading American history. Those are my hobbies. So I intend to use my experience as a police supervisor and past board president to help this board continue on the path it is currently on. I believe in being fiscally responsible while at the same time using funds appropriately for the upkeep and betterment of this community. I want to see this great progress continue. I want to maintain all that we have upgraded and improved. We have a large project coming up in May, upgrading the ballrooms, the 3 ballrooms. I look forward to being a part of that process. I'm a good decision maker with a common sense approach. I believe the community as a whole is always to be considered first. Is it best for the community or for the individual? It must be best for the community. So in conclusion, just let me say, I'm proud of this community and this board. I'm proud of my wife for putting up with me for 49 years. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my police career. And finally, I'm proud to say that I'm a cancer survivor, and as of next month, I'll be cancer-free for 11 years. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. Yeah. Okay, I'm Randy Van Alstyne. I'm originally from Decatur, Illinois. I was a dentist for 30 years. I graduated from the University of Minnesota. So I'm not going to read my entire resume because you saw that online. But as you can see on the thing, I have a new career now. A lot of you have heard it. I have a band, and I spend most of my time playing music. I was a city councilman for a number of years in Decatur, and I've had a history of a lot of homeowners boards. I'm married to Mary, who's sitting back here somewhere, and we have a son, Jason, and 2 grandsons, Will and Ben, which we don't get to see nearly often enough, unfortunately. I've got a philosophy about HOA boards personally. To me, serving on a board of directors is a lot like serving in the Army when I was there. It's a two-edged sword. It's a privilege and an obligation, both. It's a privilege because it allows a person to serve their neighbors in a meaningful way in bringing their leadership talents to the board to hopefully add new thinking and ideas to make the job easier for the present board. But it's also an obligation, and it kind of forces you to give something of yourself back to the community, and in this case, to try to have it all work for the betterment of Village Walk. Now, not everybody will serve on a board as a way to give back to the community. Some because they just aren't wired that way, and some because they prefer a less visible way through committees and that sort of thing. Everybody just has to know what their comfort zone is. I've already been asked several times, why in the world would you want to do this? Well, I guess the real answer is I'm wired that way. It seems like I've done it so many times in my life, much to the dismay of Mary. As a matter of fact, one of the things I promised Mary when we moved here was that I would try to keep anybody from learning that I ran Eagle Creek Country Club down in Naples for 9 straight years. And so when I found out that there was, I just kind of kept my ear to the ground because I knew that at some point, maybe a couple of years from now, I would like to serve on the board. I really wasn't planning to this year, but I kind of heard through the grapevine that they had nobody at that point. So once I found that out, I had to have a very humble conversation with Mary. She's a great person, and ultimately, she agreed that I needed to step up. I'm not going to tell you what I had to promise her just to get her to understand. I'm going to be paying for this for a long time. Incidentally, when I think about the fact that we didn't have any real candidates jump forward until Ray and I did, it's always been my feeling that people run for boards when they're upset about something. The fact that we didn't have anybody coming forward tells me that the community is reasonably happy with what's going on. And I think that's kind of a backhanded compliment to our present board, that people are happy, so they didn't run. Which makes it a nice time for me to serve, because there's not a lot of controversy. You know, I'm loving that part of it. As you can see, I've spent a lot of my adult life serving on boards, in addition to being on the city council in Illinois. And really, it's not that I enjoy the conflicts and the pressures of those kinds of positions, but I am comfortable that I can deal with that kind of thing. There's going to always be disagreements and conflicts anytime you're making decisions that affect people's lives. It's been my experience that those conflicts are few and far between if the board is totally transparent and if people know they can trust them to make prudent decisions. Our present board, I think, has kind of proven that. You only have to look at the last year and realize how few people come to the microphone anymore with major complaints. That wasn't true a couple of years ago. So as far as I'm concerned, disagreement's healthy, and I'm fine with people if they want to disagree with me, as long as they're not disagreeable in the way they do it. I mean, after all, we're volunteers. You know, we don't get paid for this gig. So now you kind of have a feel for why I offered to serve, but you really don't know how I think I'll serve. Although I've usually been the president of most of the boards I've been a part of, I can also be very happy being a team player without being in charge, and that's where I see me on this board. The present board has done a great job in the last year. I just want to find out how they would like to use me for whatever skills I bring to the board so that I can be a help to them. Now, I'll support the rest of the board fully, but I will not blindly support them. I'll have my opinions and ideas, and I'll voice them, but in the final analysis, I'm a consensus builder. I usually know where the votes lay, and if I'm in the minority on an issue, I may state my position, but in the end, the board cannot function without a consensus that leads to action. This board's proven over the last year that they are a board of action, and I look forward to being a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read some questions that people put in the box. When I get through all these questions, if we still have enough time, we're going to take a break before they do their closing statements. And I encourage anybody who has a follow-up question to write it and put it in the box over there. And during the break, the election committee will review the questions, and then we'll ask questions after the break. Okay, first question, since Ray went first, Randy's going to get the first question. Please define fiscally responsible. Does that preclude spending on long-term goals and focusing only on the immediate? How does this position translate to your statement of keeping values of our homes?
Well, first of all, I think you have to have both. I mean, we've got our present operating budget, and you need to work hard to stay within that. But the other side of that coin is the reserves. You need to make sure that you're adequately reserving for all the future needs. That's part of the reason why we were able to do so many things this last year, is because we had very strong reserves. So to me, that's the two parts of fiscal responsibility, and I would work towards that.
Okay. Right? If you want me to repeat the question, just, you can ask.
Okay, why don't you do that?
Okay. Please define fiscally responsible. Does that preclude spending on long-term goals and focusing only on the immediate? Does this position translate to your, this was actually directed to Randy, your statement of keeping values of our homes?
Okay, well, I agree with being fiscally responsible, but I would never want to see us go backwards. We've come so far forward. We have the funds. The capital fund is well-funded. The reserves are well-funded. If something is broken, to me, it has to be fixed. I don't want to be cutting corners. So long-term, short-term, things have to be maintained at the level they are, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. Next question is for Ray. What was the name of the community you were president of in New Mexico?
Oh, it was Alegria. It was located in Bernalillo, New Mexico, which is right between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. It was the first gated community that Pulte built, and it was 376 homes, so it was much smaller than this community. And we got there on the opposite end of the way we came here. When we got there, there were probably only about 10 or 15 houses built, so the whole community was being built. We got here in 2015, where most of the community was finished, so I've been on both ends of it, but it was called Alegria.
Okay. Randy, you want to say anything? Okay. This is for Randy to go first. After finding a town manager, what is the most important item on your agenda?
Getting him involved and finding out how he's going to operate and making darn certain he's going to stay this time. I mean, we don't need a revolving door. I've been through that at Eagle Creek. It's not fun. Every time you change property managers, it just puts everything in turmoil, and it throws you behind on all of your fiscal plans. So I think we definitely need to make sure that he's the right guy. I understand that we have a voice in that. We get to be a part of the interview process, which I think is important. So we just need to make sure we get the right guy. And once he's in here, then we can take a look at the priorities. I know that this present board still has a list of priorities that was part of the original list that they had when they first were elected of things they wanted to change, which was about 60 things, if I remember. They've gotten an awful lot of them done, but there's still some on their hit list, and I think we need to attack those next and get them squared away.
Okay, Ray, same question?
Well, I would just add that on my list of the biggest challenges is staffing and a manager that stays with us. It's very, very critical. You know, Jerry was here. I felt after 7, 8 months he was starting to find his way. Unfortunately, he's left us. From what I understand, there's been interviews looking for a new manager. We're not part of that process because we're not on the board. But I totally agree that we have to have someone who stays here, you know, for more than 7 months, hopefully 7 years. So that's a big challenge, and I hope we accomplish that.
Okay, Ray, this is for Ray. What are the 3 most important priorities the board must accomplish in the coming year?
Okay, well, in the coming year, I know we have a couple of things lined up. The first one, I think, is due in May, upgrading these ballrooms. So I'd like to see that done. The pickleball courts I'd like to see. And the town is, apparently the town is holding us up, but not to our detriment. They're just holding it up and a couple more processes, and then they can start going. One of the things I looked at, just because I take a walk around the community, was restriping of the crosswalks. A lot of them look awful and old. I would put that in there too. I wouldn't say it's a big priority, but I think the biggest priority for me is the manager and maintaining all the upgrades that we've created and not slipping back and just keep going forward. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of other projects. The hole-in-one is coming, the bagel store, the outdoor restaurant seating. We need some new street signs in the older end. I see that when I'm walking. So there's a number of priorities. So I don't think I'd make one much more important than the other.
I would add to that, I know that the Players Club, the tennis group, has an overall plan that they would like to institute with pavers and to make that whole area over there useful for a lot of other things besides just pickleball and tennis. I'd like to see us get on board with that. I'm not sure where that is. I know there's been some talks going on, but I was not privy to those at this point. But I think that also ought to be on our list of things to do. After we get the pickleball courts finished, then we should be able to figure out how that would all fit together.
Okay. This may be a bit redundant. See if you want to add to it. This is for Randy to go first. Both of you have made statements about maintaining, improving, or protecting our community and homes. Do you have any specific actions you would like to execute or ideas to present to homeowners during your tenure?
Well, I've got one thing, and I'm not sure how high on the priority list it would fall, but one of the things that I found working on the contracts committee when we went through the security contract, I was a little surprised that we have the rover in the hours that we do. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have the rovers working from whatever it is, 6 till 10, when most of us are still out and about and we could see things that are going on. To me, it would make a heck of a lot more sense to have the guy start about 9 o'clock and go till 1 in the morning when none of us are around, and things could happen after dark. It's not that hard to get into this place after dark. I mean, all you have to do, you don't have to even jump over the walls. Out near the front, there is no wall. It's just bushes. I'm surprised we don't have more problems than we do, frankly. But I would look into, and I realize that would probably take a little negotiation since we have a new contract, but maybe they would be willing to change those hours. I'd like to see the guy here later at night, not when we're all still walking around and driving around the community.
Okay.
Want me to answer that, Rick?
Yeah, if you want to.
I would just add that I'm anxious to see the new ACC guidelines produced. I'm anxious to see the new covenants report produced. And I would like to revisit the idea that came up quite a while ago about a hurricane issue, about having this area with a generator as a cooling center and a command center. So I would like to revisit that when I'm on the board.
Okay. Next question for Ray first. Kind of a two-part question. What do you think of all the upgrades to Village Walk that the board approved last year? How would you have voted on items such as painting the town center, new pole furniture, now new town center furniture, and the new color schemes allowed for home exteriors?
Well, that's
Get all of that?
I did. And to me, that's a very easy question because I would have voted in the affirmative for every single one of those issues because we needed big improvement. And the painting outside, the interior, the pool furniture, it looks like a resort. It's fabulous. And I definitely would have voted for all those issues. I'm really proud to see what the place looks like at this point.
I would agree with that. And you didn't expect us to say anything else, did you? We're getting ready to work with those guys for, you know. It's like
I'm just reading the questions.
I understand. You know, we had only been here about a year and a half when the new board took over and started these projects. And I have to tell you honestly, in that first year or so, I was wondering if I'd made a mistake buying here because I thought the place was looking tired. I didn't think we were going to be competitive. When you look at everything that's east of us, I thought, you know, as nice and new as they look, how are we ever going to sell any real estate in here if we don't upgrade everything and start looking like a new place instead of some place that's 12 or 14 years old? So I think all the things that have occurred so far, and then hopefully if there's a few more on their hit list, I'll learn those as I get on the board. But I think that was a good move, and I haven't heard very many people, in fact, I haven't heard anybody say that they thought it was a mistake. So the answer is yes, I definitely would have voted for it at the time.
Okay. Randy first. Do you feel it is important to replace committee members as they drop out when that committee is responsible for a very large job and will be recommending the spending of very large amounts of money? For example, redoing the town hall.
Give me the crux of what the question actually is.
I'll repeat it.
That was a long-winded thing.
I don't want to interpret it. I'll repeat it. Do you feel it is important to replace committee members as they drop out?
Yes.
I'm
with you so far. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
When that committee is responsible for a very large job and will be recommending the spending of very large amounts of money. Example, redoing the town hall.
Okay. Well, that answer should be fairly obvious also. First of all, if it's a committee that's going to spend large sums of money, I would hope that the board would have already vetted the person closely to make sure that they could handle the responsibility. Because if you're spending big money, we're going to hold their feet to the fire to make sure they spend it wisely. And of course, they can only make recommendations. The board ultimately has to do the final analysis, have to give them the okay to do it. But I think, yeah, you replace those people, but you make darn certain that you get somebody that's at least as good as whoever's leaving. I'd like to know why they left or why they're thinking of leaving too. I mean, maybe if they've been really good, there may be a reason why they're thinking about stepping down, and maybe their mind could be changed if the board wanted to do that.
My view is that I would like to have a conversation with the chairperson of that committee and see why people left and do they feel they needed additional people. But I would really rather consult with the chair of the committee.
Ray first, and you touched on this. Talk of a generator for the main building was spoken about for after storm events. What is your position on this?
Well, I'd like to see it, but of course, it'll be a board decision. It'll be 5 people deciding, and I'm not privy to any quotes at this time or all the intricacies of how this takes place. I feel that it's a good idea because when the storm came, it really got pretty hot, and we had no communication. Cell phones didn't work, and if we had a command center, I think it would aid the community a great deal. So I would be in favor of it at this time, but of course, I really don't know the price and all the other details. But I definitely would be in favor of really looking at it very seriously.
I would agree. After having lived through that last year, that was the biggest problem I had. Was I needed to get in someplace where I could cool down. I was so hot all the time; it drove me crazy. But if we're talking about a unit that's big enough to say run the whole town center, you're talking about some serious money. So I think the thing would have to be studied, very diligently to figure out if the cost justifies doing it. I would love to see it, but I just know those things are very, very expensive. So the big answer is yes. I think we should look into it.
Okay. Final question for Randy. And what I think we'll do, as I think I mentioned, we'll take a break after this. If anybody wants to ask a follow-up question, there's paper over there to put into the box. So we'll take a 15-minute break after this question, and then we'll return to finish up. Now that everything is all spruced up, how about a fountain for the back waterway? Your thoughts? A fountain for the back waterway is the way it's written. Now that everything is all spruced up, how about a fountain for the back waterway? Your thoughts?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I hadn't even thought about it. I don't know if it's a popular idea. To me, that's a perfect idea because if you're going to do it, you need to do it right. And the ones we had where I came from had colors in them and everything else, but they were very expensive to maintain. Every time you turned around, one of them was not working right. So we spent a lot of money on maintenance after we initially made the purchase. So if we're going to do it, I think we ought to do it right. But I think if you're going to do that, you've got to do a study and figure out. But here's one thing I would suggest we do. That is a perfect question to take to the street reps and have them do a poll of the people on their street and try to let the board know what percentage of the people really thinks that's a good idea. That's hopefully what the street reps are supposed to do, is be a conduit back and forth between the board. So to me, that would be, Dana, that would be a perfect question to, if we start looking into it, to have the street reps take a look at it and see, okay, if 30% of the people say it's a good idea, then why have the board, spin their wheels looking into it? But if 80% say it would be great, then it's probably worth looking into.
Well, I don't think we're all spruced up till I see the inside of this building looking really good. So right now, that's way down on my list. I think we need a dome over the pickleball courts with a retracting roof. and that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
Are we voting on that now?
All right, so are we on break?
Probably a big case for all your trophies, too.
Okay, I think we're on break.
We are on break.
We're on break.
Everybody help yourself to refreshments.